ahead and get started. I wanted to give you a little context first about why we exist, really, why we think that it's important to speak up for racial equity. And one of the things that was very shocking for us is, as we have been standing on the corner for quite some time now, we've had a lot of different responses from passerbys. Most people are supportive, but some of the intensity of the racism and white supremacy that we've received sort of tossed towards us was pretty shocking. So I just want to read a quick list of some of the things that we've experienced, just to give you a sense of how intense it can be here in Coos County. So we've had numerous people drive by and give us Heil Hitler salutes, white supremacy hand gestures. We've had motorists screaming "Death to all blacks" and "Kill the blacks." Numerous drivers screaming "White power." One man hung out of his window and yelled at the top of his lungs to go home. There aren't even any N-words in this town. Passengers hanging halfway out of their window and waving their Confederate flags at us while they blow black exhaust in our face. We've had a resident share, she came and spoke to us, and she shared with us one-on-one that, quote, "The Negro children already have more than the whites," which was a pretty shocking statement. We've been screamed at by a furious man, again, leaning halfway out of his windows, telling us to go eat dead babies, that's a pretty much direct line back to QAnon. So that's kind of a scary.
Oh, all right.
A scary, yeah, it was a weird one for us too. And we're like, well, and then we did a little more research and got to understand why he was saying that.
Okay.
We've had 2 cars give us the gesture for, as they drive by, that they're going to cut our heads off. And there was a woman who drove by screaming white supremacy in German at us as she was flying by, Heil Hitler's and the whole thing while that's all going on. So pretty intense. And like I said, the majority of people are supportive, and we get good, lots of waving and honking and support. But there is a very strong contingent of people out there that are pretty aggressive, and it's a little scary. So that's
right.
One of the reasons of the many as to why we want to have a presence and show up and be in support of equity. So that's a little context for us why we're here.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you for doing that. I know it's not fun to stand out on the street and listen to people yell at you on their way by.
Yeah.
So.
I will say, and it's been a while since I've been on the street myself. My wife and I travel back and forth from Mexico a lot. And feel free, William or Amy, you are out there all the time if you want to just chime in. But I would say that overall, it's a really rewarding experience to be out there. I think it's safe to say that. I'm hoping I can speak for you all when I say that. So there are some pockets of darkness, but in general, it's pretty amazing to be out there. Okay, so we'll move into the first question that we had, and I'll just read it to you again. You had it already, but I'll just read it again, so just sort of refresh. So with specific examples, please describe how in the last 15 years, you and your career have been affected by exposure to diverse people, places, or your just general experience.
Okay. So I will give a little bit of my background really quick, because I'm never sure how many people know that, but I was an attorney for the Coquille tribe when I decided to run for office. And part of the reason why I decided to run for commissioner was because I was unhappy at the way that the commission was functioning at that time, and felt like there weren't enough different voices being represented. And I'm not a tribal member, but I am by far the youngest member of the commission. I'm the only one who's a mom. And I think it's important that we're hearing those different voices. I will say, much like you, I heard some shocking things the first time I ran. I still hear them. People have no shyness about saying things about my relationship with the tribe as if it's a negative thing. But my exposure to that time, I worked for the tribe for 5 years before I ran for office. It was a great opportunity and a great chance to see how a different culture lives within the dominant culture, even in an area like this. I've also worked for the Confederated Tribes of Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians. And during my time of being on different boards, I'm on the Energy Trust Board currently. I was on the Rural Development Initiatives Board. I have led several boards through the DEI process of just recognizing areas where the board and the organization could improve by putting a more equitable lens on what they do and the services that they provide. I'll say that Energy Trust is in the middle of it right now. And it's been interesting because if you look at the way that we're funded, it's all ratepayer dollars. And so you end up with that question, which, we all know the right answer to, but, shouldn't all ratepayers be getting equal access to the opportunity to be more energy efficient, weatherize their home, that sort of thing. And so from an organization level, it's always interesting to put a lens on your policies and the way that your organization functions to figure out whether you're serving everybody fairly or whether you're not. I mean, I think generally when you realize you have to put that lens on your organization, you realize you're probably not serving everybody equally. Coos County can also be a real challenge, and I'm the liaison to Coos Health and Wellness, and that's one of the things that we talk about at Coos Health and Wellness is, are we reaching all members of the population? When the pandemic first started, we had to quickly pivot to make sure we were able to translate materials into Spanish, because that was something that we weren't really doing, and the Spanish-speaking population was being left behind in the efforts to combat the pandemic. So those are just areas that I've worked in during the time that I've been commissioner, and the 5 years before that. But I really do think it's important that we get all voices at the table, and that we're making sure that we're thinking about how the policies and the decisions that we make affect people that aren't there. And if they're not there, why are they not there? And what impact are we having on people's lives?
Thank you. Appreciate that answer.
Thanks.
Okay, and the second question we have is, please provide some specific examples of how you will incorporate the viewpoints, perspectives, and unmet needs of the underrepresented groups in our area in your work as county commissioner, which you kind of already touched on. But
I did, but I can definitely talk about that more. I think it's a challenge. One of the obvious examples is we meet on Tuesday mornings at 9 a.m., 9:30. If you are somebody who's working, it can be a real challenge to be at a county commissioner meeting at 9:30 on a Tuesday morning to try to talk about whatever issue you're concerned about, whether you're concerned about a dog running at large in your neighborhood, or potholes on your road, or even some bigger issue like your family member having difficulty getting access to mental health care. One of the things that I've advocated for in the past is making sure that our meetings are taped. So, people can watch them later, and they're available on PEG broadcasting. We are now transitioning to having virtual meetings, so people don't have to drive all the way to Coquille, which isn't convenient for a lot of people. And if you have childcare issues, transportation issues, or even just economic issues, driving to Coquille is a big commitment. That gas is expensive. So having our meetings available as a hybrid meeting, virtually and in person, so people can attend and make their comments virtually, I think that is a big thing towards advancing equity in our community and making sure that other voices are getting heard. Also, I've made a commitment, for the last 5 years, at least, to not just reappointing people to committees. Before this, if you were on a committee, a county committee, we tended to just reappoint the same people over and over again. I think that is one of those things that seems like a good idea because it's easy and you're moving people along quickly and keeping committees full. But frankly, it keeps us from getting new voices at the table, right? So that change has been made, and I think that is helping. I think we could do a better job of making sure that people are aware when there's county vacancies in committees if they're interested in serving. And then Coos Health and Wellness, I really supported them pivoting to doing a lot more of their services online also, because one of the things that we found is it can be really hard for people to get into their appointments, right, for mental health treatment. And so having virtual appointments available also, where people it removes the reasons for not showing up for treatment, because transportation is a real issue in our community, as I'm sure you all know. We have the CCAT bus, but you can really only ride it if you have a lot of time to get wherever you need to go. I gave a woman a ride home from the airport the other day in North Bend because she tried to call a taxi and found out it was going to be 2 hours before a taxi could come pick her up. So unless people are really, keeping track of that and understand all the public transportation options and what sort of timeframes they're in, it can be a real obstacle to people showing up for things. So just really advocating for more virtual opportunities and more people to have an opportunity to have a seat at the table.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
And we have one new question. This is the good news. It's not like the League of Women's Voters. We only have 3 questions, so you don't have to worry about going on forever.
That's
Make it a little
even
easier.
better.
So the new question is, would you support a resolution of inclusion policy for Coos County, similar to what the unanimously approved Coos Bay City Council put forward in 2020? And if so, which minority groups do you believe are eligible under such a policy?
I knew Coos Bay passed one, but I haven't read it.
It's so basically what it's
Tell
doing
me
is
about it.
it would give Coos County government a clear path so that they can avoid discriminating against people, and it will speak to how the county will create a safe and inclusive atmosphere for both residents and visitors who come to the county.
Oh,
So that's
yes.
the basic idea.
Yeah, that's something that we've talked about, and I would support that. We talk a lot about tourism, and I mean, this is just an example, but we talk a lot about tourism, but I found it interesting. I participated in a group, American Leadership Forum, and they did a tour. I don't know, it's probably been 4 years ago now. It was before the pandemic, going around to different places in the state and talking about the urban-rural divide.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that surprised me, before we had our kickoff meeting and we talked, and a lot of the people of color from the metro area were worried about going to rural Oregon. They weren't sure what they would encounter, how they would be treated, and whether it was a safe place for them to be.
Yeah.
And that was a big eye opener for me. I hate to say shocking, but it was a little shocking, because I've always found, and I'm white, but I've always found rural Oregon to be a very safe place. It's always very welcoming and very inclusive, but clearly that's not everybody's experience.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about things like tourism and economic development and jobs, if people don't feel safe coming here, obviously those nice things are not going to happen for our community, because people aren't going to go to a place where they don't feel safe and they don't feel like they're going to be welcomed. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really easy when you're white to say those things don't happen. But the truth is, they're not happening to me, but they do happen to people of color. They have that experience when they're in our communities, and it needs to be safe. And yeah, I don't know that I would exclude any specific parties from that. I think, anybody who is in our community who's not part of, the white majority should feel safe here. They should feel safe here. That's the simple truth. Is we don't want to be a place where people go and don't feel like they're safe or included.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So we do have a couple minutes. Are you open for just a couple of minutes in case people have a follow-up question or anything like that?
Totally open. Yeah, if anybody
Okay,
has questions.
So if you all want to unmute, if you have anything else you wanted to follow up with or anything like that, feel free to join in.
Say something if you want to say something.
I was just curious, in the other position, there is a John Sweet who's been in the commission for a while, who's running, and I guess I was wondering about your opinion of what it's been like to work with him. He's not running against you, so there's no competitive issue, but
right.
I guess I've just heard some mixed things about what he's like in terms of being a good old boy, on the commission, and but not very progressive, let's say. I guess I wondered what your experience has been like working with him, as opposed to, I guess, and if you're aware of any of the other candidates or have had interaction with the other candidates, who are running against him.
Yeah. So I've worked with John for 10 years, and he is a really lovely man. I mean, he really is one of the nicest people that you'll ever meet. He's a registered Republican, but I tease him all the time that he's not really a Republican. As a matter of fact, somebody held up a sign at one of our meetings saying that he was a rhino. And after the meeting, he said, "What did they mean by that?" And I started laughing. I said, "They meant you're a Republican in name only. That's what it stands for."
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, I hadn't heard that one." But he's a really nice man and a really kind man. And I would say he's probably the most progressive of those 3 candidates that are running in that seat. But he really does. He cares. He talks a lot about mental health and poverty is really his big issue that he talks about a lot. And he worries a lot about people living in poverty.
Thank you.
He's an old family name from this area, which is, I'm sure, part of the reason why you hear the good old boy stuff. But no, the current commission actually gets along really well. We don't always vote the same, not by any stretch, but we have managed to perfect the art of disagreeing and taking a vote and then moving on, which is, something that I really value.
Yeah, that's no small feat in this day and age. I mean, that's telling that you're able to communicate and move forward. That's good.
Yeah, it is. It's tough. I mean, I joke sometimes that we're like a dysfunctional marriage, right? But it takes a commitment to getting along. And we generally make the decision to get along every day. Because I believe firmly that people in the county deserve to see a government that's functional and looks professional and is not ending up on the front page of the paper and embarrassing you, because we should be able to talk about things in a way that's professional and keeps them moving forward.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, Phyllis.
Yeah, I'm relatively new to Bandon, not in terms of time, but in terms of being involved with local politics or people, who are running the government. So I'm just curious how you perceive progress in terms of feeling safe in the community, the different values that there are towards having inclusive communities. If you're feeling optimistic about this, or are you feeling like everything's moving upstream at this point? What's your kind of emotional feel about it?
I think you probably have to ask me after this election. Before this election, I would have said that I really do feel like we're making progress. We work really closely with Coos Bay and North Bend, and also with Bandon, but a little less with Bandon, Coquille, and Myrtle Point. But I do work really closely with Coos Bay and North Bend. And Coos Bay's city council has changed dramatically in the last 6 years. And North Bend's has too. And they're thoughtful, they're sensitive, they're thinking about the things that they say, and they're thinking about who needs their voice heard. And I've been really impressed by that. And I've noticed, I grew up in Coquille and graduated from high school in 1989, came back here in 2000, at the end of 2006. And I saw a dramatic shift in this area between, when I left to go to college and now. And I feel like even in the last 10 years, it's changed a lot for the better. I really do believe it's been for the better. There's always going to be those vocal minority, but we shouldn't mistake them for being the voice of the community. Just because they're the loudest, I think it's easy to feel like, they're saying something that a lot of people agree with, but I don't think that's the case. And you hit on that right at the beginning when we were talking about the, being on the street with the signs. It's not the majority that say rude things. It's a very vocal minority. And the things that they say are so rude and so horrible that it's hard not to focus on that. But really, I have found generally that people here are lovely and they really are kind. I think, we had the issue at the commission when we had a bunch of people show up at our meeting back in August, right after the mask mandate went back in place, and they were refusing to leave. And then when the cameras went off and, we moved to adjourn the meeting, John Sweet and I, and then, I closed my laptop. When the cameras went off and we started walking out of the room, several of those people said some really horrible things to me, similar to what were said, to you guys. And I made that fairly public on my Facebook, and I got a tremendous amount of support from people. And it was funny because in that moment, I felt like I was very much alone. Like, I was ready to resign that day just based on that kind of behavior, because that's not the way I see Coos County. But the way that people responded, the things that people said, gave me reassurance that that's not Coos County. that that's a very small vocal minority, and we shouldn't let that color our opinion about what kind of community we are.
Nice.
Wonderful. Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
Well, thank you. We very much appreciate you taking the time to be with us and share your not only your answers, but your just your general input and feedback. It's really great to hear. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate it, and it was nice to talk to you all.
All
Thanks for
right.
the work you're doing.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
That's what makes our community a better place. I have to say it. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. That's why we
Have
try.
a good night.
You too.
Good. Thanks. Bye.